So welcome everybody. And we are very happy to have Geshe Sende here again. Geshe came already last year to teach in New York, and this year he just went back from India and Nepal and almost straight away came all the way from Boston, where he's the resident teacher there to come to teach us. So we are really very happy, very fortunate. For those who are not familiar with Geshe Sende and the Tibetan study system, he's been studying very intensively and practicing very intensively for 20 years to get the Geshe degree. We can say from experience, and also that's what the students from our sister center in Boston, that Geshe is very kind, very wise, very humble. So we are very happy to have you coming to teach us Geshe. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Hi, how are you, everyone? Good evening. What do you say? Did anyone come before in Tibetan house? I think you were that time. You were that time. Then I know that. Anyway, very nice to meet you. I'm very honored to come here, a discussion with you. Then thank you invite me here. Then I'm very happy. Then we have great translator here. Then I can just speak Tibetan a little bit. Then my English is not good, therefore you all misunderstand. What are you talking about? How many people already study or heard Buddhism? Yeah, most of you. I think most of you already study. 당간도 들이 계시해야 돼. 아니다. 아니 뇨모마 세야 돼. 아니 소소라 강에 간이 저기요. 아니 된디 강에 대 세야게 탑시. 아니 나주나 간래요. 다 된디 콜바지 랍고 여러스.
Today we're basically going to talk about how affliction really affects us and what are the ways we can overcome affliction. In Buddhism, what are the methods that we deploy to overcome affliction? So this is going to be the main subject of discussion.
That's it? Like that? 아니 다 뇨모세데 가리지라고 해서 나스러. 근데 뇨모세데 다 미데 나도 나주고 다니지래서. 그게 뇨모세데 시박 강식 강사라니게 질라 응엔데 줘야나. 아니 라곰 제 지금 맞죠와. 아니 마대와 칭에게 아니 시바실이야. 다 뇨모세라고 그랬어. 텔라타르만 담나 뭐라서.
So when we look at affliction, and we have to start looking at the word nyomong in Tibetan, because nyomong is a cont or the original Tibetan term that we describe the meaning of affliction. And so affliction is a kind of the awareness. Affliction is a kind of consciousness. And through that consciousness, through the cause and the subtle consciousness, it's affecting the way we see things. And so this affliction is really in all of us, whether we are practitioners or not, whether we're Buddhist or not. That affliction is within us, and it's in all of the sentient beings have or experiencing this affliction.
아니 콘로세야다 나자세야다 저도세야다 단소리들어 단소 강사도 질 까디 근데 저와나 아니 강사디 간이 맞죠 제가 그래서 기본에 걸어.
And so if we give example of afflictions, we generally talk about anger, the chadot, which is a jealousy, and then this controlled by the ego, we tend to have an incredible, like a pride. And so these are the example of afflictions we just talked about. So when these affliction arises in our mind stream, and it really gives us kind of unbearable suffering, intolerable, if you like, this uncomfortable feeling.
그러와 근데 용도하지 간지 된지 배나 공로로 중간에 제와이나 아니 라곰 제 자상지 답되고 매와시 지금도 와서.
For example, when you experience anger, and you feel so uncomfortable in your mind stream, at the same time, people next to you, they also feel that kind of uneasiness.
그러와 따땡아도 하고 왔어. 근데 저와 다쳐선 캔을 도근도 왔을 때 대인바 된지인자 아니 따때도 뺀지 봐라 녀모rinda 뭐라 빼면 뭐래 간지 시바 강아시 강사 되질랬잖아 아니 라곰 신지 마대와시 농이게 안 되고 되고 매와 키우들다 나도 녀모시 메타와래다 텔란다면 뭐 보여로 왔어 가지 공로도 빼는 그래서.
So I just gave you anger as an example, how it's affecting us and others. Basically, when affliction arises in our mind or in others' mind, and it really causes a lot of discomfort and suffering to both ourselves and others. And it's so obvious we can experience that.
What do you think? It's true? If we all have complete experience, right? Then, even your Buddhism, non-Buddhism, religion, non-religion, doesn't matter. Whoever have manifested the angry, attachment, jealous, then arrest,
we really should be aware or recognize every time when the affliction arises in our mind stream, immediately we feel so uncomfortable.
텐제상 간조 남배 추근하라야 아니 지 텐제기 시바 아니 딱 강사랑 이제 띄워매봐 마대와 징이 시바데 가리지 봐 아니 되게 아니 소소 텐제기 시바다 소소지라 가리는 게 저거요와 그러와 진짜 가라더니 저거요와 아니 대매와 가리지 저거요와 대매와 제나 아니 편독술요와 아니 내가 술 저거와 어디니 거다세요 소세르스.
So in Buddhism, we talk about affliction. And then we talk about what is this affliction really doing in our mind stream. So we start really being aware of how the affliction arises, how it's affecting our behavior and our thinking. And then we talk about how we really overcome, how we really, in a more kind of straight way, tackle this affliction. And then we talk about the harmfulness of the affliction. At the same time, we talk about the benefit of eradicating affliction in our mind stream. So this is, we're talking from a Buddhist point of view.
아니 조 안주질라 소소 딱가르스노 체춘 도메 수도세나 그들이라 당가세 짜침보지 섬데 노스 가세시 오다 조 맞아 조 투데레스로 그다 공로다와 베지지와 대체가 자와서는 가세 주침보 섬데가 도 데레스.
So when we look at affliction and start thinking about the causes of the affliction, for example, if we look at anger and thinking sometimes we get a really strong anger, sometimes the anger is more kind of subtle, but it's there. And when we look at this anger, and we immediately feel the strong feeling about I-ness, just like a very strong urge to association with the feeling, this I-ness, the I, or the grasping, the self-grasping mind. And then we, look very carefully. And this really, this strong self-grasping and this anger is related. And so you can say one of the main causes of this anger is closely associated with this strong association with self, I.
들어와. 다때 렌도도 뭐 인간도 삼로지 당다. 저도 삼당 용요에서.
I would really like you to do a reflection. Have you ever, did this kind of a meditation before? Really investigating how this, anger arises.
그나 컨트롤 나와이나 컨트롤 간질랑 그래. 내 강한 라바테 녀마서야다. 얘나 내 삼마데 제마서나. 얘무나 나라 책 야보지 책 많이 보지 랍서야다. 아, 얘무나 나라 남겨 독자지 땡서세와. 어떤 레지 용거스. 레지 라테는 것도 컨트롤 사기 그랬어.
When we feel like angry at someone, and if you observe very carefully, and you feel that this anger and frustration is closely linked with the feeling that the person did not do according to my wish, and the person did not follow, my advice. The person did not follow the way I wanted things to happen. The person didn't listen to me, or the person didn't, react to my emotions, and so on. So closely linked to this my constantly is coming. What do you think? Do you think is this the case with you?
Right? Therefore, now we need to a little bit change. That take any one that take any one that thing also. 이 문제 단대 남백을 해봐라. 남백 세상 간디종아. 근데 영화도 가래. 그냥 나 대완되지. 등어만 나라 대와 내가 대와대 따다 가지 내 고야대 트레그면 되우삼에. 소소 강 고야대 트레그면 되우. 바 신백의 소소라 따다 차나 트레그면 되우삼. 되게 삼도 되네. 삼도 요발아 때네 간도 간지 컨트롤담 대차잖아 기억으로 와서. 근데 인자 다 파지가 고려야. 다 나를 텐데 만데 만나지. 콘도 때 너거든 너거면도. 대 파까지 고려서 와. semji shembala rwa. Ani nganzola ndewa naji, semji pachobala ndewa yoba mato, mendebe dhiji nganaso lundang, rikpadang, adiya kanga nyega marisi. Karo, semji pachobade. Soso naji dewan depa jimba mato, soso naji dewan, karo, mendebe jimba, nganaso lund, rikpa, ta seri karingana dhubto marisi. Tirade nganaso chikpa jimba marisi, samla.
So if you look from Buddhist point of view, and if you see that we get frustrated, we get angry because we desire for happiness and we are not getting that. And we desire, pleasant, nice things, and somebody else is maybe not giving that to us, or we're not getting that. Because of that, we feel frustrated. And then if you really twist, or if you really change our position or the perspective, and if you put other people in your own shoes and think about how do they feel exactly the same thing. They desire things, for say happiness, the way we do, exactly. They do not desire any suffering like we don't do. And whatever that we wish in terms of gaining happiness and so on, if you put ourselves and others in a position, and they do exactly feel the same way. And through thinking that, the Buddhists, use both the logic as well as using the references to sutras and tantras. And you cannot establish any reasons that contradict to this common sense. And whatever we wish, if we all wish happiness, and the sentient beings, the others, they also wish for happiness. And you cannot contradict to these common senses. So this is a basic Buddhist principle. And from that point of view, we start thinking that we are all same. We all, wish for happiness. We all do not wish to experience suffering. And this is really kind of a universal feeling.
로와 텐제 임바다 다데고 줄로케자 개말에 대시당 의분에서로 의고 땅가로 신속 로단으로 벌어봤어. 그 줄로케자 좀 말게 말아봤어. 가지 직대는 돈 말아봤어. 아니 가지 다 여럽 쇼정세지 그런 것도 여럽 텐데 여럽 그 쇼와도 제와 있는 대근 저월라 아니 소소라직 저야 보지마다 레카데 여럽을 해서 나도 그러봤어. And chick like a dujachen and like a marbles. Maramizakana tea and revola and a chick round roachy, tiwo deo me like at the marbles. They didn't think up what it was.
This kind of a universal feeling and thinking that we all desire for happiness, that we do not desire for suffering. And on the other hand, this is not an exclusive to Buddhist thinking. You can say this is from a kind of a secular point of view. It's a very common sense. Like when we look about just secular world, when we engage in things, the activities that brings a good result, and people say this is a good thing. When we engage in activities that causes other people discomfort and suffering, and the common sense is this is a bad thing to do, and so there a lot of common senses, and from that point of view, what the Buddhists really engaging in investigation and practices, it makes really sense, and it's really very common sense approach.
다 간제 마지 단대 담봉어도 라야 돼 임바스. 가지 시박 강시 강다라니 jel라제나 아니 따지오미 마치긴들 뇨모세 되니 뇨모들라 내차 시에다 뚜모 공로도 좀 임바스 대가서 오시바 제고 그래서. 그봐. 오늘 대ngo 신이 따든도 지금 매화세가 탑시 강다가 소소jel라 마치하고 탑시 아니 간네는 다 간네도 웃다는 거도 다 로용 지하다 소소 삼로다야 어떻게 제고 그랬어.
So we go back to our original point that affliction is basically a emotion or an activity of mind. Really, that kind of causes attachment, anger, as well as pervert or mistaken views, and so that's what the affliction is. And so the Buddhist point of view is that we investigate and really go to the root of this affliction and try to find a way to eradicate that affliction. And so that's what we are talking about, a kind of a Buddhist approach to deal with the affliction. And then once we understand that there's a solution to really overcome the affliction, and we have to engage in starting about how do we really approach in a kind of systematic training, in training to overcome the affliction in terms of meditation and contemplative studies and so on. So that's what we are really talking about from a Buddhist point of view, how we approach affliction.
다 텐데 녀모도 소시 마제가 답이 수수자라 가리 냠네 지고라 가리 공고서나 아니 샴바세 니제세 젬베가 삼바세 됐어야 슈치아 땅에 답이고 그래서.
And so one approach that we used to overcome affliction is, if you like, the method, one of the Buddhist method to dealing with affliction is to really engage in practice of compassion, loving compassion, and also engage in the practice of cherishing others, the altruistic thinking. So these are some of the approaches that we use in terms of dealing with affliction.
다 두니지 삼도다 간이 저자 그래서 나타나서 손마당 그래서 바다 곰라고 잡아이나 아니 지 소소 따지 로봇 소송 이제 가지 로봇 생에 말 로봇 고사기 되는 로봇 고사기 pendant 뭐 주고 정아 뭔가 주어서 삼지 다 대설지 라샤 아니 나세 다세 휴치면도 대설지 라샤 다 소소티 paradarla yachi 저지도 넘지 되고 그래서 paradarla 되니 para라 알아 저 로봇 세팅에 젠세가 공상합지샤 아니 나세 지식 소들라샤 다 소소티 paradarla 되네 근데 삼부탄 거래스로
So we talked about doing some kind of meditation or engaging in a contemplative approach to dealing with the affliction. One example is we visualize other people, a group of people, maybe 10 people in one side, and then you also visualize a group of people strongly associated with me. Just one person in one side. You visualize yourself, which is really holding to this self-grasping honest, just a very selfish person, like you visualize one side, the others. Then you really stay in the middle, and then you kind of investigate.
다 강사 마데 담마다 공사 녀데 담스 당군의 로직 가로 가서 시바 다가로 남주데 담바지나 아니 강사 마데 담 가로 와세 그러 마마데 저 마데다 로바 치고사 들어와 단데라 가세 찌여와지 바주로 강사 찌여와지 소소티 바라다지 가로 저칭으로 들어와 근데 당군의 로 남주 담바지나 담 마데 I'm going to was. Oh, to the chene. Da mate chick robachi cosa. And the Kaji the mate bachita, so nasa chick de robachi the chin, but that chido mani sudamana, da mate dam, tangonichi lo namche demate damgo res. Tende chene yana yando gumba yana. 아니 수주제랑 나세 슈침봉한테 맞춘 로야기 답시 직 오투스진 레세 고장모는 미치도 뭐 무슨
So in these practices of overcoming this the selfishness mind, you visualize a group of people in one side, then visualize yourself on the other side, and then you stay in the middle like a judge. And then reasoning, and see who should we really take care of, or who should we pay more attention to. And if you really do a proper analysis, and you would come to the conclusion that you should really take care of the group, the majority. And from that point of view, that you should take care of the interests of the majority against yourself. And an intelligent person or a smart person will come to a conclusion easily. If you have a group of people on one side, then yourself say, who should I really take care in terms of the interest? An intelligent person would say you should really listen and pay attention to the interests of the majority people. And so this is a good way of practicing. His Holiness really uses this scenario for practicing overcoming selfishness. So that's one way of doing that. And for these practices, you have to be, you have to really know that this takes time. You have to do the meditation repeatedly for many times to really get tuned to these practices. And as you do it properly, it will help you to overcome selfishness.
Tende chewa yana chiga randa yen yin mar yen ke chewa tsewa yana ngado kontro sasa chato chida kanga yen jan chega yosime sosola ta kontro tan samsam te chega ma che chega mar bas tena randa yen yen ka chewa sa chewa tsito yana ane kontro ya nyuren rowa chato ya nyuren rowa ane chi ta nyumo kanga ma gonne me peno chimo chara yores.
If this meditation really takes effect as you do it repeatedly. And one of the benefits is that it will reduce the anger in your mind stream. You know why? Because in most situations you get angry at other people, right? And if you think about, your anger, in most cases it's kind of against another person or other people. You seldom feel angry at yourself. I mean, you do sometimes, but in most cases, you're angry at somebody. And when you do this meditation about the importance of the majority, the interest of the majority versus minority yourself, and when you do this kind of meditation, it kind of effectively reduces your anger. Because we have to remember that we often get angry at other people. And now, if we start thinking about their interests, and you start, feeling, I'm doing this wrong. I shouldn't, feel angry at people, me versus the majority people. That kind of a practice is, effectively enables us to reduce our anger, reduce our jealousy, reduce our affliction. So this is the kind of one direct effect of this meditation.
For example, if someone hit you, maybe intentionally hit just like that, we immediately get angry, right? You say, "What are you doing?" If you hit yourself just like this, if you maybe move something wrong, just hit like that. You don't get angry. If you're angry, you have to hit. What's that? For this object, microphone, right? But we don't get angry, right? You say, "Wow, I do mistake just." The same hit is the same, but the human being, we get more angry than other objects, some solid things, right? We don't get angry. We have to think about why. Do you understand? Right? When we was a kid, maybe we walk, we hit some rock, maybe, and then we get angry that time, when we were a kid. But now we are adults. We don't get angry, right? If you hit you at some place, or maybe you fall yourself, you don't get angry. But someone maybe push you, you get fall. We get very angry, right? Now we need to think about how difference, why? Right? It's same if you fall the ground. If you something maybe some or some ice, something that you fall, or someone just push you out, it's the same you fall. But at the moment someone push you, you fall, you immediately get angry. If you just walk, or maybe you walk something wrong, you push something, you fall, you don't get angry. That's the country or the condition of any objects. Right? Are you guys get angry? No, right? If maybe, maybe in New York, winter weather is very cold, maybe a lot of ice, you guys walk, then you fall, but you don't get angry, right? Are you guys angry? Not much, maybe sometimes. But someone a little bit push you, or then you be angry. Then we need to think about How the difference? Why I'm not angry? I fall by myself or maybe that place. If someone push a little bit me, I'm angry. How difference? You really think about that time. We always think for others, especially human beings. They will
So when we been hit by a person or animal, first we get like struck by some stone, and our reaction is incredibly different. If someone like accidentally hit us, we get really significant frustration and anger presumably at the person, and then the same amount of the like effect come through an accidental with an object. You don't get angry, but the effect on your body is probably the same, but our reaction is a significant difference. Why? This is because related to our perception, and we feel when there is a person or animal with consciousness, hit us, we kind of conceptualize that person or that animal hit us. We really conceptualize that thinking. Versus when we accidentally hit against a wall, we never even go through that mental processes. So the difference is only how we really go through that mental processes and perceive the others. That's a big difference.
Right? Tende yembada ta kanje tende ke samto de mewa soyala ta nganzo chi semje shambala chi shamba se nije se de jega taphi ta nganzo ya kompetant ta go res te shamba nije se taphi jewala semje pajo bada ya sozo naji dewan do pa na dunga mendo ba imba ani jingtong ba samto de jega ta go res ro.
And so in order to really overcome this misconception about other people there really intending to harm us, all this kind of misconception, and the one way of really overcoming that is really we develop a loving compassion to all sentient beings. We develop really kind of a compassion at others. How do we do that? We really put ourselves in their shoes and put them in our shoes and thinking, I do desire for happiness. Likewise, all sentient beings desire for happiness. And I do not desire for suffering. And they're all, same, do not desire for suffering. And when you really develop this kind of the empathy and the compassion, and then you start really experiencing this feeling, this equanimity, that we are all same. I'm no better than them. They're no better than me. I'm no different from them. They're not different from me. And you start this natural feeling, this equanimity, right? This feeling toward all the sentient beings.
텐데게 샴바도 니지 가서 치와 대점지 강하다 들라더니 뉴무제 뉴로 그래서.
So the point here is, as you really engage in meditation about the compassion, the loving kindness, and so on, and the more compassion and the loving kindness that you feel toward other sentient beings, the lesser anger and frustrations that you feel in your mind stream. Because you remember, our angers are targeted at people, not at object. And when we really subject them for our compassion, so that kind of a compassion replaces that frustration at them.
텐데엔자 수수질라 가는 텐데게 샴바는 니제 강 톱치와 영화 대참지 아니 강하다들 때니 아니 다 공로도 내차 공로 시당 가제 제가 동아대 수질라 제와 매와 차하도록 같이 동아대 요 막과 차서 오는 거를 차로 그래서 그러나 텔레트는 콘로 찍고 말아서 지금 뭐한다 텔레트는 콘로 집에 동안도 타와래서 타노다 타와서 그런 건지 동안도 영가 말해들어.
And so the incredible thing about this meditation and practice is as you develop more compassion and loving kindness at other people, and as you really practice and generate that in your mind stream, and you experience more compassion, more loving kindness in your heart, and as you go through that, it replaces this frequency of the angers that you experience. And before, you constantly feel so frustrated, feel so angry all the time. Now, because you have been doing this meditation, generating compassion and loving kindness to other people, and you're experiencing that to other people rather than the anger. And this really kind of saves you from the torment of anger and frustration. And basically, it really saves you from the suffering of anger and frustration through these meditation practices.
그러나 소소 가세가 sem치하다 밑에라 sem치들라 때네 아니 소소 코로시라 사가 말했어. 장도시라 라가 말했어. 근데 마셔봐 인자 아니 소소 콘로다 차도나 이동하도 다 탈세가 가지 대 냐마고 작성하세. 소소 가세 sem치들라 때네 sem치들라.
So when you look at all the sentient beings and look at the sentient beings, and now you really feel compassion to them. You feel really kind of empathy to these sentient beings. And thanks to that kind of change of the attitude, you do not have to suffer anger and frustration. And in effect, this meditation saved you from anger and from suffering. And so this mere change of the attitude toward the sentient beings really have a huge effect in your peace of mind.
배차차와이나 다 존존날 바지 빠와마 부고영이 바지다 마모윤도 가오래 와세 덴지 빠와마 제정의 수수 직다다 수수 부글라다다 수수 부글라 콘로 세베가 동아 콘로 세베 콘로 대다 미셰발 콘로 세베 콘이 치와치라 이랬더니 사무치 다다 저 콘로인 바지 바지다 콘로라지 미파조를 콘로 사디 콩알라 내째송스 콩알라 가오면도스 지는 콘로 사게로 와세 부글라 콘로 사와데 부고데 다 약보주 용하게 탑시 아니 수수 사만하지만 딴데 약보주 용고는데 약보 내 맞네 코치 코로 두자 용은도 삼에 부글라 간지 샤체 그노지 콘로다 심지 파조를 지 다음에 콘로인 라고면도 와세
I'm sure a lot of you have children, or maybe you still have your parents. So if we compare the anger that we aimed at other people versus at your beloved one, although it's the same anger, but if you really carefully investigate, it has a very different feeling to it. When you get angry at a person who, maybe just some stranger or one of your colleagues, the power of that anger is very different from when you feel anger at your child or at your parents, because the angers that we aimed at our beloved one come out of our good intention. Like we want the children to be happy, we want the child to be successful, and he's not doing so well, and you get frustrated, you feel angry. Thus, you really feel angry at your colleagues or somebody else. Although, it looks like they're both anger, but if you go deeper, they have a different meaning to it.
근데만 콘로 마사바이 바이나야. 즉 미셴바당 수수 가사게 섬진 잡았나? 수수 가사라 때문에 콘로 사에 뇨야다. 아니 소소 마가사들 콘도사에 마용도 와서 가르나 소소 가사들 아니 소소 샴바다 니제 코 대와다 덴데질로 동안다 트란데질로 휴침보 요원자 텔라 때니 공로다 차도 망사요 말들어. 사버던가도 보고서잖아. 밤마다 보고로 시가 주된 적을 빨아야 다 다시 샘티니 공로죠 사요 말도 간지 다 때려 대화지 쇼나 딴자 싸는 말도 때려 때는 차도도 공로다 시간을 남겨 말아왔어. 대 맞지 생각나? 소소지 가삭 샘전 소소 세워서 되나? 아니 될 때는 세워야 될 샘지 될 때는 공로 소소로 누가 땅에 공로돼 용어면 와. 그래서 샘지 강갈할 때는 지 세워식 아니 샤바세야지 인지해야지 가지 누가도 트렌드지 로스 대화다 된지 로 텐지지 깨도 딱 답시죠 그래서.
Then if we analyze carefully that if we think about our beloved ones in one side versus people we do not like, so in kind of most cases that we get less angry and frustration with our beloved one, and people we have difficulties dealing with, we get more kind of a frequency, the higher frequencies of angers aimed at them. So this is so obvious, like for you guys, you get less angry at your children or child versus people who you find it difficult to live with or dealing with. So from that point of view, if we're able to really generate compassion to all the sentient beings, and the result is that we get less angry, because our anger is aimed at other people. And when we define these people as a subject of our compassion and our empathy, and so that's really effectively changes our mood, and we get less angry because of that kind of a change of attitude.
다 간지 먼저 당강도 지금 노동으로 올라와이나 간지 샘진 차상 소소나시 대반 도용의 장장 동안 민족의 장장 임바 삼로 당하시 대직 다고를 해서 대 삼로 당 타와이나 아니 수수젤라직 간지 수수젤라 강한 요원도 그래서 수수 샘젤라 따따다 때서 가가 차와서 수수젤라직 컨트롤 요원다 자동 요원으로 팽을 해서.
So in essence, if we're able to develop this attitude that all sentient beings desire for happiness, and that all sentient beings wanted to avoid suffering, and if you really kind of cultivate this attitude constantly, and the good thing about these practices is it reduces the sufferings in our mind stream. Because instead of this frustration and the anger that we constantly feel at others, we started feeling compassion and empathy to others. And so that kind of generated more empathy and compassion in our mind stream.
근데 당 간조 지금 간조 미산 거대 반자. 대 임바나 가리 군동하나 내적인도 왔어. 내 저거든 하나 내적인도 와. 나코 간제는 코 야보나 삼고 벌써 간조 챙으러 왔어. 대 재미삼나 수술습니다. 파초베 소소직 파주 마시베 온 간소로 내적을 맞아. 삼진이 시지는 간소 내적이요 말했어. 간주면 간주 깨져 시했당. 근데 렌제소는 다 달로로 도바면 다 이메일 이게 뒤단가 미 파주에 셈을 막아와 차려 간소 용도 왔어. 간주 셈 담보직 가로 소소 셈 그때는 콜네와 찍고 점점 매웠어. 나 깨져 시했당가. 이게 뒤단 남지 때나 전에 파주와 소소로 당뭐 차는 와.
And then, as we talk about generating compassion and loving kindness to all sentient beings, and some people say, you can't do that because there are other people who often harm us. There are other people who often really cause trouble to us. Why should we practice compassion to them? And why should I practice compassion to people who wanted to harm me? So you often get this kind of question. And from our side, the first reason that we have to develop in our mind stream is that these people causing the anger, and these people causing and harms and so on to us because of their ignorance, because of their kind of unknowing or unaware of their way of dealing with other people. Maybe I can give you an example. And a lot of you use email, computer, because you have such a wonderful training. And sometimes when you shoot email to your colleagues and friends, you do kind of a very instant reaction to certain situation without even thinking about what you're saying. And we do so in a way that without our awareness, that we cause suffering and anger and frustrations to other people, right? We do that. We just, read a short message without thinking the consequences, anything, whatever. We just read what we feel, how we feel. But when this, cross to our friends, and when they read, it has a different tone to it, and they feel certain emotions. In some cases, raw emotions to that. But if you really investigate carefully, when we write that email and message, we really didn't have that strong intention to cause pain and hurt to that person. We just kind of expressed how we feel. And likewise, when others really causing us pain and so on, they didn't have the intention to cause us pain. They didn't have the intention to really harm and get us down. But they really did without the awareness of these consequences. So that first reason, they cause us anger without the awareness. That's one powerful reason.
배차진다 다 전도 조화제면 날에 조보조면 삼점最쇼근도 왔어요. 저도 쇼근도 왔어요.
Another example is sometimes you have a quarrel among your friends or with your friends. Has this happened to you?
Right? Husband and wife, boyfriend and girlfriend, sometimes you have argument, right? First they start argument. You don't pay attention. I want to argue with him, or he or she. But you just use the word or use the action. They mix to argument, right? 수수고 남게 된다다. 아니 수수고 남주대 파쪽에 가로 문에 제땅 차니 간지 디바란 주고존나 용도 왔어.
When you argue with your friends, and then this argument sometimes leads to quarrel and conflicts, because the way we express ourselves, because of our kind of emotional expression, causes this kind of conflict.
But maybe this country we don't see much argument, say words, right? And you go to India, Nepal, Tibetan, the argument and the streets very loud, they say better words each other very loud. But here I think everybody very education, they just write the letters, right? Just say words.
No, they hire a lawyer.
Yeah, right? Then they say hire lawyers, right? Like that, we really thinking like that kind of things for more detail, more carefully. For all, any activity things, annoying. Then kaji kange mamboji suzu kaji mishibe kara hamokewe and then mumba tiungwe.
So a lot of these, pains, the frustrations that happen to our partners come out of through the lack of the awareness. Without lack of awareness, really, and sometimes we say ignorance, brings all these confusions and conflict. And here we're not just talking about a Buddhist principle. We're just talking about it in kind of a general common sense.
간지 가도 뇨모세데 간이 째기요. 대매와 탑신하고 간지 요래서 될라고 그러더라.
And we're talking about how emotions arises and what are the way we can really overcome emotion.
그러와. 아니 나주는 팔라오나 다 나주고 랍자. 다때 빼면서 비 랍지 뭐 여러 와서.
If you really talk from the Buddhist point of view in terms of dealing with affliction, there are a lot of resources.
그러. 왔다 된리다 다 나버서 다 가서 관계 가르쳐 그런다. 지 샘지 간지 라렌 타데베 샘지 차단하지. 미비 아니 지 더서 대화도 된듯이로 누가다 찬도일로지 제 토야게 제가 탑시 딱 간접적으로 제거를 해서 대체와 가르쳐서나 콘조야 나라나지 대완도 봐다 도파나 누가면도 봐 진수인 봐 상로 땅도 봐이나 도서 제가 탑시 되어를 해서.
And so in short, really we should generate compassion and loving kindness to all sentient beings by thinking that all these people like myself desire for happiness. All the sentient beings like myself wanted to avoid suffering. And if you really generate compassion and loving kindness with this approach, it will really help us to gombe devulya
gombe devula 아니 소소라야 대화 영화 그러나 소소질라 아니 파조발라 비면 뇽마 가디 추와이나 아니 소소 지삼기다 대화 용거로 봤어 소소 생질라 아니 샘지 파조발 뇽마 가세 슉 치와 삼지 아니 소소질라 누가 마 담버도 마 아니 요다 마 용거랬어.
As you meditate on these, and the result is that you really gain more peace and you become more compassionate, you become more peaceful as you practice loving kindness and compassion to other sentient beings. On the other hand, if you just let your affliction control your mind stream, then the result is you constantly engage in anger, frustration, and it's very painful experience. So generating loving kindness to other people, other sentient beings, really has a huge positive effect on your mind stream because you feel so peaceful because you generate so much compassion to all sentient beings.
가로로와. 근데 인자 간제 같이 싸워서 다지. I want to say something that I forgot just at the moment. 가래에서나 양안도 땅 고대오로 미세야 돼. 나 고대에서 간제 사람 땅 오랬어. 좋아. 만도 내가 개 매웠어. 삼나. 만도 내가 미세가나 나도 코로 사고 말했어. 나도 코로 사다 나도 소소는 내가서 자자래서. 소소는 내가 영에대 소소를 까리지고 소소를 로빠칭에 니 슈는 로빠칭이 자자래 들어. 나도 내가 미세 나도 코로 사고 만도 왔어. 그래서 나도 코로 사자가 미텔라 나도 내가 요래서. 근데 내가 여기면서 kunzo 가르치 모르겠어. 가르치잖아. 안 빼차잖아. 나간도 지 가르다 사초 좀 통초초 놓았어. 너도 찾아 미 셴바식을 손에 가도. 간지 나도 기초초 배치 따초초 놓았어. 양간도 고대로 왔어. 내가 깔래 잡 내가 전에 무선이 뇨일라 그러와. 근데 근데 내가 듣는 소리 더 진삼지는 찌는 판데네 징한도 만들어 로빠 매칭이 파지 펜토 매칭이 찌고 명예로 공로 사대사대 나도 공로 사서 이 메신도 왔음지 단소 간도랑 이 슈제네지 까디 마치와 당간도 로빠 매칭이 찌고 간도 파시아라고 말했어.
And so our mind is very smart, and when we start doing meditation on compassion, a universal compassion, just for the sake of word. And then at the back of our mind, it started questioning, saying, why should I, practice compassion to all these sentient beings? Because I have nothing to do with them. They're not related to me. We have a very different life. I have no relationship to all the sentient beings. Where should I practice compassion? So sometimes your mind questions your practices. And then if we feel that way, we have to really overcome this doubt by thinking following points. Yes, they are definitely relevant and related to us, because we do not get angry at a total stranger, someone who has nothing to do in our life. We usually don't get angry at them. In most cases, we're angry at people who have some kind of a connection and a relation in our life. Is that true? And because of that, we get angry at them. So people who we get angry at usually something to do with our life. And so if that is the case, yes, we have to practice compassion to sentient beings because they are relevant in our life. Now, why we start thinking the following 2 points. The first, that we start thinking that all these sentient beings are very kind to us. Why? For example, we often eat food that's already made. We have a house to live. We have clothes to wear. There are a lot of things that created by others for us, and so they're very kind to us. And then your selfish mind would say, "That's not true because I'm paying for them." And for that, then you're saying, "Yes, you're paying for them because you have a job, and that gives you income." And think about it: who gives you a job? It's another person to give you the job. So if you really trace all the good things that you have, it's coming from another person, other people. Every good thing that we enjoy, it's come out of the kindness, direct, indirect, of the other sentient beings. And because of that, we practice a meditation and thinking the kindfulness of the other sentient beings in our life. So I think it's really important and also beneficial. It's very beneficial to really think about the interests of all people, all sentient beings. If there are 10 patients, for example, from a doctor's point of view, that he should really take care of all of them. He cannot choose one versus other, right? He has to take care of all the patients. Likewise, when we take care of the interest of all sentient beings, we become much more kind of a broad-minded or big-hearted person, so that we become more open-minded.
다데 마지막 답이 가르나 되니 제사가 예텔라야 샴바다 니제사 지게토이나 되니 뇨모데 제가 말해스 되니 샴바다 니제 수수질라 가세 콤벤로가 쌈지 아니 ngaranso 소소 아니 대와다 소소 지가로 시대 요레스 다데라고 그러더라.
So we are basically doing the following thing. We look at the source of the affliction. And then, the affliction causes a lot of unhappiness to ourselves because it controls our mind. And the affliction, is a targeted. Affliction come because we target them at sentient beings. Among the affliction, let's say anger, we get angry at other people, or because of other people we get angry. And then our antidote for that is if we really generate compassion, if we really cultivate compassion to all sentient beings. And that, in result, it makes our mind more peaceful and serene. And because we get angry because we're thinking other people are causing that to us. But if we, on the other hand, generate compassion at them, then the chances of us getting angry is lesser. As a result, through these practices, we gain more out of that. And so if we look at our feelings, this like a hatred to our enemies, and then this like attachment to our beloved one. And if we really look very carefully, underlying these feelings, it's all created by our perceptions or attitude.
배차차와이나 간도 다 존도지나 냠뇨지레스 미카지 로보토모 가지 당보 투여가라야 당가 저런 냠도 청사제 말하는 바진가 시게 예스 나 희는 희도서를 삼기되는 마모여서와 니마지 로카지 다와카지 로카지도 다 저런 냠도 가 같이 마도는 가 시게 삼기되는 마모여 온도 왔어 근데 제사 로만도니 제다 강사 찍으러 왔어 강사 제원도만 소소 따단제소 말어 왔어 근데 요래 왔어.
So the point I'm making here was that everything that we, feel and think is created by our perception of the other. Maybe one example is when we meet our partner at the beginning of our life, we go really crazy, and we're thinking, if I'm not able to spend my rest of life with that person, I'm going to die. We get that kind of attachment to the person. And then as you live and spend time with that person, and at some stage of your life, you feel so frustrated with that person. And then you start thinking, if I'm not able to divorce with that person, I'm going to die. And then if you really, observe very carefully, and that person hasn't changed. What really changed here is your perception and attitude toward that person. So this really indicates how important the perception really plays in our mind, in our life. It's not so much about the object, but it's our attitude that constantly changes.
배치나 담보 영화대 건 내차가 영화대 전에 아니 바쳐와대 야가지면 누가 좀 통해 말아 봤어. 내차가 영화 내차 그런 유모 셈 유모전다 그 영화 전에 긴 레벨고 다 내가 뭐 가로다 니오 전에 같이 두자모 영화 말아 봤어. 대다 그 레벨에 담보 뒤 영화 전에 대 영화래서 슈마고 잘한다 보니 니바 가잖아네 내가 줄줄도 말아 봤어. 아니 그 맞춰서데 아니 소중한 따서 놓서 말아 봤어. 저서 말아 봐. 근데 여러분
So, if you really observe carefully in the beginning of your relationship with that person, you are so kind of influenced and controlled by your attachment, and you had such a strong kind of lasting attachment to that person, right? And then as you kind of spend time, and that attachment kind of consumed, and you started becoming detached to that person. So again, the importance here is initially your perception of that person is really distorted by the attachment. Is that the case? Do you find that relevant in your life? Therefore, here, how we perceive the perception is really very important in our life. How we perceive things. Is that the case? And therefore, when we, get this hatred toward a person, it's really come through our perception. We perceive that person as our enemy.
야, 그다 나 색들랍서 대 콩아 가면도 콩아 야보체니 조금도 콩아 내 지어라자 근데 소소 점점 뭐뭐 성도인데 곰잡네야 안에 수 처처처다 안에 소소 건다니 막음이들이 용어도 땡가도 냠뇨 여러 봤어 다 근데 그 지들랍 된 거라 소소 징 남에로 샤샤와이나 아니 거야 처렇게 용어 말 소소 셈부 속여 말어 봤어 근데 그 지들랍에가 근데 동아도 수냐도 말했어 소소 쌈 따단 거리 땡가도 kali sam tamurus.
And so the way we perceive and think about these is really plays a very strong role in our life. For example, in most cases, when we experience frustration and anger at someone, what we really did in many cases was that we really meditate and cultivate greater frustration. We keep building, we magnify that situation. For example, instead of really using antidote to calm down the anger, what we normally do is we meditate and magnify the problem. How do we do that? Say somebody really said a nasty word at you. And then we go back home and we really analyze it, saying, oh my God, that person says such a bad word to me. And then you start feeling the, a pain. And then say, that's a terrible thing to say. And again, you're generating more and more and the pain in your mind stream. And you basically you have been contemplating a lot to really relive in that experiences. And as a result, you're really manifesting a raw emotion and building that emotion constantly. And at some point, you really become unbearable. And that's how ordinary people and a lot of us used to do, dealing with affliction and anger. But, antidote for that is to be really aware of such a negative effect. Initially, when you are involved in kind of a situation, the number one thing that is very useful to do is really to ignore that, what you say, the negative perception. I'm not saying ignore the emotion or feeling, because sometimes it's dangerous in a Western concept. I'm saying we should really ignore that negative perception. Do not really encourage that negative perception explode in your mind stream. This was right. Yes, no kunzu tachi ngaranzu doshi sort namdo jorba. Dil ya meba ma maba je tu chambo je shana.
No de.
Ya to. Ya kunzu the emotion di yama che sunu kunzu ya di nyanga sabu de sto. This was matters. Da ji namdo jorba. Namdo ngembat. Dil ko ji di ma che chen tungi ma de che. This was.
남도 다 남도 지 소소서 남도로 깨르봐 대라 소소고 도단이야 다 마르다 마샤서 봐 대마르다나 아니 간도 지 메바르게네 트나 산놈루나 메 마르바르 와스 대 지버차는 그러스.
Yes, exactly. What we're saying here is we should not encourage that mistaken perception, thinking, oh my God, this is such a worse, like a nightmare or something. And we shouldn't really magnify that kind of distortion. And one example that Geshe-la used is when there's a fire going on, and if you throw wood and gas on that, it'll get really much stronger. Likewise, when the emotion is really raw at that stage, we shouldn't encourage and make it explode, but we should really find a way to calm it down.
그래서 나도 강해로 나도 강가라 강해명이 줘요 말더라. 단단 내여라 파제 몸다 별에 가서는 영가나 나도 강해명이 미치긴 것은 나도 쓰지라 샤라고 말했더라.
And so all of us go through trouble. I don't see any trouble-free people. Maybe say in New York, a couple of million people lives here, but I don't think none of them are trouble-free. And they're all, going through different troubles and the problems. And what are the problems and the trouble? It's and they're experiencing undesirable experience. They're going through undesirable experience like ourselves.
텐데 바야자 치 가르스네. 텐데 강에데 돈레 제탄라테네 아니 수수 강에 치아도 중요한 거 봐서. 강에 돈레 제탄.
So when we really face up to these troubles, face up to our daily problems, and then we will find a way to overcome these challenges.
pena samlo tanda de pe music ke chimo yores pena chara minila ya chi kangi chipa chi jana chawe bachi michi ke kangi de tande ngone to ngala chen ta khir ma to pe music da jongso samko che 지금 music tene ke 마스마이나 music chara masam de la ya semla dunga chara te to mares shembade semla dunga tele padme be che ngoro.
And so if we look at, in daily challenges, the way we perceive the problem has a significant role in terms of defining ourselves. Let's say a same problem. If you have two people going through the same problem, because of the different perceptions that they two have, as a result, the effect of the problem in their mind stream is significant. For person A, thinking this is nothing, and the effect in that person's mind is very different from the other guy who going through the same problem, thinking, oh my God, this is the end of the world. Although what we see is the same problem, but the experience going through in our mind stream is significantly different. Why? Because the way we perceive the problem is very different. Therefore, how we perceive the challenges is really very important to investigate.
야 강에다 세트 맞지 라고 말해. 강에다 세트 치고 되나. 강에다 미세 수 생부터네. 강에 춘주디 첨부소 맞아 들어. 수수야 줬다네. 남도 첨부대. 되네 맞아 오지. 야 강에 세야가 탑이 아니 간지 제거를 살아 버렸어. 무슨 한 삼삼 권위적도. 아니 석 등하로 가르쳐. 난데 수수 내 연삼네. 다자 삼네 간지 수수 강에대 직 세야가 탑이 맞으라고요 말들어.
So in Buddhism, what we are saying here is when we go through challenges in our life, we say, yes, we should really face up, or what is the best way to say, we shouldn't avoid the problem or our challenge. We really should overcome our challenges. But what we are saying here is it's really important that we do not distort the problem. We do not kind of magnify the problem through a distortion. At the same time, we should do our best to overcome the problem. And it's wrong to thinking, oh, Buddhists believe in karma. If there's a problem, it's karma. We can't do anything about it. That's really mistaken understanding about Buddhism. What the Buddha is saying is, of course, you should overcome your problem. But first, it's really important that you see that challenge as it is. Do not distort or mistakenly view the problem.
But the members who love Dr. Kiwato Lager Minila Nasa Pota Chiba Imana, Michi Sema Lele, Michi Semangambra Ingana, Mingambra Chingede, Nasa the Trakale Kayada, and Sema Lele Yungada Nasa de Trale Light and Duxing was. They Suzu Semna Raleigh, what thank you.
And recently, the scientists are reporting that the same illness that different individuals go through, the outcome is vary according to the perception of the patient. The perception of the patient, plays a really important role in terms of overcoming the diseases. And now the scientists are reporting that too. And so what's important here is how we perceive problem has a really huge effect how we experience the problem. For example, and the scientists are reporting that the diseases experienced by the same diseases or similar diseases experienced by different individuals. The role of the perception is really important in that. this is because the person who tend to be more relaxed, more broad-minded, tend to recover much faster from the disease compared with the individual who are easily stressed, who are easily kind of overwhelmed by problem because of the way they see the problem as vast and big. And so here, even the scientists now are reporting the perception plays a really important role in our daily life.
And Suzu Sembase Kishmoshari, some Tantala, Shivara Legres. There is a Tanganzo which and the Nyomaga Suzuchi Karota Shide, Kanis Jumdo Yoa. They say a Tabi Kande and Basonzamata, Kajikango and Chewa in Nayang. They Suzu Sembudania Chimbo Soya Tabi, Gomjam, Chimo Maso. Roa. I don't know some Sembudnes judging Namtok down and Marso at Chimbo Masak Tabi. 대마야 탑시 야쇼데 근데 콘솔 사다가 얘라 샴바다 니제 고메데 다 야쇼데레스
다 단데 되게 어도 남버가 다서 뭐
다 시다 남베게 따수저래 왔다 다 이제 땡구이 내서 오래 왔어 간지 나도 남베게 쉬는 시와들 라고 여 봤어 나 땡구이 내서 로당도 오래 봤어 간지 소소지 콘솔 사다가 얘들아지 샴바 슈치 뭐 니제 신지 뭐나 될 강다들은 콘솔 사고 말어 왔어 가나들은 저도 사고 말어 봤어. 시다 남베기 랍자레다. 된직땡이 로당 차돈 돈 말어 봤어.
And so now, as we talk, it's really become very clear that how we think about the problem, how we perceive things, plays a really important role in our happiness. For example, in terms of dealing with anger, the afflictions, and so on. And if we let the affliction really control our mind, of course, then the problem remains. But on the other hand, we really try to overcome the affliction through, a various approach, which, both the solutions that the Buddhists are talking about is also very common sense. This can apply to a non-Buddhist approach because here, it's not really important. This is a Buddhist principle versus this is not, because the solution that we're talking here is a very common sense based. And so, what the Buddha is saying here is when you face problem. Number one, it's really important not to cultivate and magnify the problem by distortion, by affliction. And then the second approach, we are talking about here is really change your attitude. Instead of letting anger and affliction and angers control your mind stream, you really cultivate compassion and loving kindness. And when you really practice loving kindness and compassion, you are at more peace. Your mind is at peace. And that's, benefit you and us a lot. And this, like advice is very practical. It's not kind of exclusive to Buddhist principle.
텔레 전세여서 봐. 샴바드 니제 고베 전세. 다 전세면 전세게 지난데 샴바드 니제 공부는 그 구바자로 봐서. 전세가나 만돌아 까디 첨부 연자 콜라 샴바드 니제 공부 그래서. 만주 파말라 망아체 제작급주 고거디 파말라 아니지 샴바드 니제 제근도 봐. 가전나 파망도 까디 첨부 연자 되러 와서. 대도 집바 삼지자담 당강도 야이 맞은게라. 도디 자이어. 전세면은 삼다나 그 구바자로 그러서.
And so, when we say we cultivate compassion and loving kindness to all sentient beings, we're not just talking about out of, like ignorance. There's a strong, solid reason for practicing that. That is because all the sentient beings are very kind to us. For example, we really see our parents. When we think about our parents, we think of them very kind to us, and we have this natural fondness to them. Why? Because they're so kind to us. So our attitude to our parents, is a very pleasant one. And we maybe like have this natural kind of a warm-hearted feeling to our parents. Why we get such a nice feeling to them? Because subconsciously we're thinking, or maybe cultivate this notion of them being so kind to us. They have shown us a lot of love and affection. And likewise, we should cultivate similar feelings and attitude to all sentient beings. Why, like our parents, all sentient beings are also very kind to us.
배차샤베나 총바송도 가르쳐 버려. 나도 총바를 가르쳐 버려. 총바도 요는 나도 뉘어요. 나도 요는 총바를 총행. 총행이여 봤어. 아니 뽐보서 나도 가르쳐. 나도 뽐보를 가르쳐 버려. 나도 요한테 뽐보들야 막가당사 요라스. 아니 뽐보 요한테 나도 요 콘도치 라베니네 지 아디에치 제노. 나도 제 삼부 당하나 차상 가르쳐 뭐.
So when we say that all sentient beings are very kind to us, we can maybe use for example, the business community, or the traders, or these companies are very kind to us because they are supplying, the products to us. At the same time, we are very kind to them because we're paying and purchasing their product. So kind of we equally kind to each other. Likewise for the politicians, and the politicians also are kind to us because they are taking responsible and doing certain, the leaders or the politicians or the leaders. The leaders are very kind to us because they're shouldering major responsibilities on our behalf. And at the same time, we are kind to them because we are following their vision and doing things. So this like being kind is just like a dependent or interdependent. And then the Buddhists, believe even our enemies are very kind to us. Why? Because thanks to them, we're able to practice patience. And so, from a Buddhist point of view, that one of the reasons we engage in this kind of practices is because we gain so much. For example, when we cultivate compassion and loving kindness to all sentient beings, we are experiencing loving kindness and compassion in our mind stream instead of anger. And therefore, it's really important that if we desire for peace and happiness, we shouldn't harm other people. When we harm other people, then troubles also go through our mind because of our direct action.
Okay? Like that, I think maybe not talk too much. Now I think you guys have some questions, then we can discussion. Some more, you guys more understand, more make sense. Otherwise, just I say talk, then you guys a little bored. Any questions? Yeah.
This all sounds very nice, and I see the utility, and it just feels as if all of the examples were pretty low level. People can do great harm to each other, and they can also do great harm to each other within the most intimate bonds, where you're supposed to be finding safety. So you were mentioning family, people that you can't always escape from, and it just feels as if, not everything is in one's perception. It is if you decide to take if you decide to turn the other cheek, if you decide to just completely renounce Just seems I don't know what you're supposed to do when somebody's really doing real harm. And it's not just perception, it's real harm.
To you.
I'll just, to put this to a huge level, right? I mean, the Nazis really did do harm. The Jews could have maybe perceived this as, I'm attached to the self.
Sorry, I didn't hear the
Up to the,
Jew. Did you say the Jewish people?
yeah.
Okay,
To an absurd level to me.
can you make it more specific? The question.
What do you do when there's real harm being done?
Okay, sure. 그러나 디슨 거를 좀 땡기 다지기 시행게 소소ल्या 너버게야다 된대가냐 행인지 광부에 서버 광부에 소한 저봐 다들 직단기 는 감저지 간에 세븐 된대 인기를 레델에다 있네래 지금 심제 시행이라냐 너버치냐 저봐 근데 오늘서 오늘 그때 년가 차에 너버게니 된대 요레스 딩가라주 직 능중가라주 당 가라주 가번여보다 능위 변지에서 직체 말하면서 다직 저함에 미스체 파르마치에 다스치와 다 참삼이냐 즉 소소문에 지금 년년하고 인생은 너를 운에 그때도 내비게냐 민들만 보여리스 그런 디시에 동안 지위식대 로규다 된데 시에인도 담바 다 지위도 저래 운에 즉 소소섭서 마신 미한다 그때 세자 자무스니 된데 그 장원마대 요리스 자인도 담바 다 디카소를 지기 내비들에 된데 다가스 지기 당가란주 셈거 초단교 내비주고 말이스 땡기를 무시 디스온송아스 알아서 지금다 콘도사야다 가리 내래 수수 남도 지금다 먹고 수고레스 그지 파 남도도 때 이제 좀 지라랑 밀케와 요마레스 남도가 디자오리 디 초버리 타지고 송구도 이네 남도 주고 말은 뭐네야 니좀 가셔 돌려 너비게냐 그다 당 오면 여러 딩가란도 남도네 잡지는 뭐는 뭐네 다 수수서 맞은 수자면 다니 얘기 자오 이어야 요레스 그럼 어디서다
대 저거를 삼대로.
로
대 뭐나 저거를 삼대로.
다 지섬줄 라는 셰브는 더 비싸샤는데 남도 주고기 다 가서래 타주 신경 말해서 나는 다 troubles 예저 봐. 오늘 다라 요레스.
장도 라야 대 자서 남도 거래서 라고 말들 봐. 자시치 여와치 대 수수고 남도가 치아 소적이 요레스. 제가 라야 된 문제레스. 간도 아니 된리가 간지 당부 견조와들 가리 견준 전에 내 장고마 차 안에 사서 먼저 소는 얘가들이 마부 용거를 대 저랑 라베 된 건들은 이제 그래 면도 요스러워 이난 간중은데 시찬이 마부진 것도 생명원에 수수가 남도고 말소죠 그래서 그러고 다도는 근데 강이 춘주나 강이 치아도네 근데 주마 속파 가로 제리제들이 다 차는 것도 봤어 춘주지야 전부서네 어떤데 얼마 강아 재정가도 생부치고도 라고 말했어 간주 수수 샘다 이게 냠도 오지네 또 수수 샘게 말 소줘야 되는 요래서 봐
뒤치지 다 저원님한테 다 자오 tin데 오늘 여러 봐 디 인도 잠바다 대 아직 다 그런 저기 그런 게 쉬울래 그래서는 대 가지고 다 뒤치고 말했어 다 갑자기 자오 말해 탑시 대고 말해 뒤수
답진 되고 되게 나도 다 라인 봐 당연히 라인 봐대 레레 삼 대대 말해 답이 제거는 게 라인 봐 근데 대 답이 이렇게 따로 제거다스 그래 무슨 내가 다 가는 레인 삼 대대나 소도 녀다선 두요로 와 근데 이제 답이 제거를 했어
So getting back to you, the first comment that you just made, not everything is a conception. You mentioned they're real in the people, among our intimate circle, as well as perceived animals, enemies who wanted to harm us. Yes, I'm not saying that every enemies or every kind of object is purely our creation. That's I'm not talking about. What I'm talking about is the perception here, especially the distorted perception. When you have a problem, yes, there is a problem. We mentioned that we do consider a problem being there. And what really makes it worse in a lot of the situations is our affliction distort the problem, magnify the problem, and make it a really mega issue that almost impossible to overcome. And so the emphasis here is why this distortion and the magnification of the problem? Because we have the affliction and the distorted kind of a perception. So it's really important, first of all, when you have the problem, see the problem as a problem, but not let it be distorted through our kind of afflictions and so on. So that's what we're getting at. Then coming back to the second issue, when there is enemy or problem, yes, we do accept the problem is still there, and I made emphasis in my previous talk that as a Buddhist, we should really deal with the problem. We should not kind of escape and run away from the problem, and we shouldn't think, oh, this is a karma. I'm meant to go through that, have that, and let's accept it. I'm not really advocating that kind of approach. I mentioned before that we shouldn't think that this is a karma and just leave as it is. We should really come up with a solution and deal with the problem. But by doing so, if you let your affliction rule that situation, then the more problems rather than solutions will come out of that approach. So the very important approach here is when you face problem and enemies, really see the problem and enemy as it is. Do not distort it. Do not let your affliction to distort this whole issue and make it much bigger. One of the words I use here is do not let your mind exaggerate the situation. Of course, you have to deal with the problem. If you don't deal with the problem, you would not even able to protect yourself from this, like a source of harms.
왜? 아니 되네 봐줘봐도 코로마 잡이 갑라야 아니 라테다 다장들 늘지에서 왔는데 참 말은 말해서 라바이나 거기 시행으로 왔어 갑도 텔라지 파지자 투주지 파지도 마시네 아니 요다 마 소로 봤어 간지 탑시노 가리도 손도 담당으로 해서
regarding dealing with threat and dealing with the harm coming from other people. His Holiness also addressed this very topic before. People asked, what shall I do when I go through danger? Maybe, when someone's attacking me, what shall I do? As a Buddhist, how should I respond? His Holiness said, yes, we definitely should come up with a response and we definitely should come up with an approach and a tactic. But the number one, you first should really avoid that kind of a situation, the threat. For example, when you feel you're under threat, number one approach is to get away from that circumstances, to run away from that problem, that threat. It's very important. And the second is if you let your anger control the situation, it would only make the situation worse. That's because the person who really wanted to harm you is doing so under the influence of affliction, right? And then if you let your affliction to really deal with the situation, and when two affliction meets, and then definitely the consequences wouldn't be a pleasant one. And as a result, as a Buddhist, when we deal with this kind of physical threat and physical harm, we have to be incredibly skillful dealing with issues. For example, when you feel you are under threat and you are in danger physically, and one of the approach is to diffuse the situation by maybe avoiding the person initially, and then as the kind of affliction dissipated or as the affliction subsided, and then maybe you can use reason to talk to the person. But when the person is really totally controlled or under the influence of affliction, there is no point. Try to go and explain. The best situation, the best approach at the time is to avoid that. And then as the person is more calmed down, maybe you can use reasons to really deal with the situation. So we're here not talking about, this is karma and give up. We're talking about a very skillful and smart approach to deal with the situation.
What do you think? Miss Hoika, does understand your question?
Did we understand your question? Did we address the issues that you raised and you expect us to raise?
Can't, not really.
Yes, and
No.
Yeah.
sometimes one can't. Sometimes one
Yeah.
has to actually engage. Sometimes you're forced to engage as opposed to retreat. If for your own interests.
그렇죠.
그래서 참참 가라스는 지기다 최야 돈달이야 점적으로 방문에 등재 카디자 내주인데 연구를 했어.
Yeah, of course this is coming. Therefore we are all the time fighting each others. This is of course. It's also, we can do, but we talk about that issues now. For when we get angry, we are not very happy, right? Therefore, without angry, you can explain. To give the reason, you can try to save yourself, or you can solve the problems. We're not talking about, if someone comes, just accept. You cannot do anything. We're not talking about like that. During that time, we have to try to how do that. How can we deal with that? It's Buddhism way. We don't do it like that, but the real practice is without angry, And
the Buddhists are advocating that you should really deal with the problems without under the influence of affliction. Our teaching, Buddhist teaching, really advocate that we should deal with the problem without under the influence of affliction, including anger. Because when you really deal with the problem with the affliction, like anger, it only creates further problem. So here, the emphasis is really to not let the circumstances be ruled and be controlled by affliction. So that's what the Buddhist is saying. And unfortunately, that requires really a lot of practices. And therefore, sometimes a lot of us really are easily controlled by anger. And we get involved with the situations and it's easily driven by our affliction. It's really hard. But in the teaching, it really does talk about the importance of not letting your affliction, control the situation. But you should control the affliction and then deals with the situation. And that approach will be far more effective rather than letting anger, rule call the day.
I guess also this brings up the question of, would one try to generate, despite all odds, and despite the harm that's coming, to try to generate compassion, which seems a very contrived thing, to try to develop compassion for someone who's doing you harm. But would that be something that is doable? Not that
That is, brand is this one. That and the Gisela this one. That Nyumong can that jig maybe tone, and the jig Gangasia, the catch him with the Sungus. Tangaran Jitanji may get it was in a mini that I'm sure they are. Panama, that she was a constant social that you could fix to Martin and Manguchi. Tadilia Yaland to Nemo, Tangaran to Honda Masabetone, Captain Jow, Sungo. Honda Masabetone, Captain Jow, that is a Consul Ning Gong. That is Ning Gom 2 as the best. Then one edge of social lepines near she would get a shooting dart in the jig. And some of the Pigay Ning Gom 2, that is a 2.
땡고는 냠len 바지나타 자타무치 도그레스. 와. 가나 코체와데 코니제 뇨모바 미치 마리 몸비 온게 코체를 마다 코로나야 쌈지데 시즌의 당행에 나와는 있고 내가 진짜 요 말을 봤어. 이나 코로 미시베 온게 제가다 그거는 이제 딱 건지 시그문도산 뭐 냠len 바야 보이나다. 당가도 제도 말어. 냠len 바야 보는데 제도 그랬어.
Yes, it's doable for in someone who's really against practices, and someone who really had the realization and the practices of compassion and so on. For them, it's not a problem to really feel compassion to people who are, harming you. Why? Because they'll immediately think, I feel so sad to see that this person is totally controlled by affliction. That's sad. The person has no control, but rather he or she is controlled by affliction. And because of that, a lot of sufferings will be drawn. And through this kind of realization, or whatever you call that, compassion is easily cultivated in those advanced practitioners' mainstream. It's it's doable. It's definitely possible. But then, for us, the ordinary, the beginners, is hard at this stage. Generally, we feel you can really easily cultivate compassion at someone who is engaging in action out of ignorance and out of affliction, out of control. It's possible.
배차샤와나 간두절라 콜라 니제 그 전세요래 들어와. 들어와. 던지겠다. 배차샤와나 나 깨줄 콘도서 내 깨줄라야 점적이 쉬워이나. 나 점적이 쉬우다래서 나 제거해도 점적이 쉬우다래. 나 쉬우다도 뭐 가슴이 찌고요 말했어. 그래도 나 니제 딱 그렇고. 던지 너와 팅에 되게 봐주고 너와 지사에서 말라. 코로나 선발 마디시는도 그랬어. 가지. 그래도 그 그로지가로 노르 미시봉 처럼 마도 삼제시 정말 맞게 땡겨서.
So yes, there are a lot of powerful reasons to cultivate this kind of compassion. For example, if I involve in a fighting with a translator, and then out of my affliction, I hit on to the translator, and then although I'm the one who really managed to hit to the translator, and after a while I started feeling the guilt. I go through a lot of guilt, a lot of emotion, unpleasant emotions, and although I managed to hit someone, but I'm the one later has to go through this kind of guilt and suffering. And so if you use that scenario to someone who really maybe hit you or did something negative, but that person go through a lot of suffering because of that consequences. And so again, you can cultivate compassion based on that kind of practical example. So for really genuine and advanced practitioners, this kind of compassion is so easy to cultivate, but that requires time and practices. For us, as a beginner, it's very hard, but it's not impossible.
쇼진이 다 재미가 가로 소소대다 사전 쪽 파르가 오면 다 가로 쇼로 비샤르세 이나 가디나 예물로 콘로상도 주 소금만 왔어 가디 임바이나 아니 가서노 나도 말 때문에 뭐 말라잖아요 콘로사에 말했어 소금도 왔어 대 나기 냠는데 숙침보에 따로 땡겨 왔어.
Yes, it's definitely possible to create compassion to one's enemies. We have an example of His Holiness. His Holiness lost his country, his people, his home to the Chinese, the communist Chinese. And again, when we attend his teaching, he often advises us to cultivate compassion, including compassion to people who abuse you or to take advantage of you. And you don't feel any anger out of him at his teaching. On the other hand, you really feel this compassion and loving kindness, and that draws him to a lot of people. And so that is also a clear indication of his practices. So that's, we have an example. And it's, the matter of practices. If you really engage in practices, you can reach, this level of realization. And when you type, a text and email, sometimes you don't have to look at the keyboard. You even don't have to think about it. It automatically, you can type a lot of words instantly. That doesn't come out of nothing. It comes out of a lot of practices. Initially, you struggle, and at some point, you master the whole thing. Likewise, when we practice and go through proper training, we can reach, like Buddha or His Holiness. But it's a matter of training and practices.
Okay?
Yes, thank you.
Any other questions? You have a lot of blessed, yeah.
Actually, I'd like to make a request. I think maybe in the West we have different ideas of what loving kindness might be, love might be, what compassion might be. Right? We throw around these words, these concepts, but perhaps not realize with a very specific concept of what it might be. Whereas in Buddhist philosophy, there is even a specific definition of what compassion is and what loving kindness is. So I was wondering if perhaps Geshe-la could give the definitions of these mental states that he's been discussing according to those philosophies.
나도 니지에서 저와 semchekanji dunga chana chamaru samge lojelata injiyedala kores. Ane dunga chave devatanda dena chamaru dena yapundu samge lojelata shambas la kores. Injiyeda shambas.
No. So
devata dena dunga chana ta chamarda dunga denga karo. Dunga chana yapundu dunga chawa shok tenriga samsok lodala ta ninjes tenri dunga na chave dewa tedang dembar shok ta dena yapundu ane chik tenriga samsok ane shambas ane te dunga to chagi be jensa da dewa da denga be jense ta chik kari chimoy mada mambu konga yorwas soso na che dewa ndo pa chinga yinpa dunga mendo pa chikpa yinpa terimpa samutang.
So when we talk about compassion and loving kindness in Buddhism, compassion is like this. We have this strong desire for all the sentient beings be free of suffering. When we think about it, I wish all the sentient beings to remain free of suffering. And that constant kind of feeling is described as nyingji, the compassion. One example is a mother who really had this desire that her child to be free of suffering. And so that is what we talk about compassion here. And then the loving kindness, the word chamba, is a strong desire that all sentient beings remain in happiness or enjoy this, suffering-free happiness. And that kind of desire is considered a loving kindness. So here the emphasis is a mother who really wants her child to be happy, successful, and to have all this kind of proper things in his life. And so the feeling to the sentient beings that they, enjoy happiness and they be in great joy, and that feeling is described like a loving kindness, the feeling of loving kindness toward the sentient beings. And in the case of the mother, that she wants her child to be in total joy, free of suffering. And so once you're able to cultivate that kind of feelings to all the sentient beings, consequently, we enjoy peace. We enjoy that pleasant feeling. And so I also forgot initially when Geshe-la mentioned about the cultivating compassion and cultivating loving kindness. And we deploy a lot of reasons. We deploy a lot of reasons for developing compassion. We deploy a lot of reasons, powerful reasons to, deploy them to cultivate the loving kindness.
Okay.
Is that?
For example, what kind of reasons?
Yes. 아니, 대신에 금제일 때 이제 자본인지
dunga kenyo ta dunga chiunyo to ta nyonde go mendo was tele ngada chiba chichare ta semje chaza ngara dunga mendo ba naji semje ta chaza dunga mayo shosan soso samta soso dewa denga ba jinte samdani de nashi ane semje shemba soya ngara da chiba chichare dewa denga ba ope tejane soso pe soso sha.
So one of the reasoning that we use is I desire all the sentient beings to be free of suffering, because I myself also desire, to be free from suffering. Using yourself as a point of start. Likewise, I want all the sentient beings enjoy happiness or remain in joy, because I desire for happiness. Like that, all the sentient beings also equally desire happiness that I desire. So you use this kind of reason to cultivate compassion and loving kindness.
당연히 공슈사인바 아니 소소 나시 대화다 강사 네코 대화다 코나지 대반도 봐 동안만도 봐 말해서 강사 지우셔야라고 말했어 봐. 샤는 찍버 찍장 대반도 봐 동안만도 찜소리했어 봐. 나도 강사 찍장 뭐코 바지 코 대반 되고 말해 코 동안 되고 그래서 뭐지. 코 등한다고 말해 가로 등한 대wan 되고 말해 등한 되고 그래서 들이 가다 싱어도 샤라고 말해서 차상 가도 집어 소소소 대wan 문제고 지어요 말했어.
So to further the reasoning that we use, that if you really think critically, you would not find any sentient beings who do not want happiness. Like ourselves, you would not find any sentient beings who want suffering, or who want to suffer. You cannot, if you really think critically, you would not find any sentient beings who willingly wanted to experience suffering in a kind of a right sense. So these are powerful in a reason to cultivate compassion and loving kindness.
이만한 간소 dunga 문도 봐야나야 dunga 용의 정원도 사셔거래 대원 더 봐야나야 대화 용의 제야 보면서 사토요 말더라고
사토요 말이
사고요 말이지 대원 더가 대화 용한테 절대 내용 그래서 봐 뒤져는 간소 사고요 말이 Dunga doga marda dunga yoga jeda ngado sasha yores. Tenreza ngado dunga zoya me yungu was.
So although all sentient beings, including ourselves, desire to be free of suffering, but we do not know how to be free of suffering. And that's our problem. Likewise, we all desire for happiness and joy, but we are not able to cultivate the proper causes for happiness and joys. And because of that, we are constantly experiencing problems and suffering. And we are constantly chasing after joy, because we're not able to really cultivate the appropriate causes that produce the happiness and that free us from suffering. And so this is like a simple example. We had a great intention to help someone, and then we talked to the person. But we are not skillful. We didn't know how to do it. Instead of helping the person, sometimes we upset them, right? Because we didn't know how to say this or help the person. And likewise, we all desire for happiness, but we are not able to cultivate the proper causes that generate happiness, and that's our problem. And I think we had enough of a discussion for tonight.
Okay, now the terms finish. And I hope you can get some ideas. And whatever I say, also, I learned this idea from Buddhism philosophy. And you can analyze meditation. You can check it's true or not. Not just I say, not just Buddhism say. You can check logically yourself, then a little bit more study, read some more books. Now you can able to listen to a lot of teachings in online, then more study, your more education about that. Then you know how you practice, how you deal that. Therefore, thank you everybody. Then I'm very honored. I'm very happy to be with all of you today, and thank you so much. Now we have stopped. Then all to dedication, whatever today we create the positive actions to dedicate for all our wishes to come. Then peaceful world. Then happy. Then successful life. Like that, okay? Gyawanda da tamjo rabdungo, tesung shabe, gyawa tamjo je ngowa kama chodangi, dajin kiwe tsawanda ga, sambo chunjo rabdungo war je penden june, tenpa dajin je, tenza jewa tamjo kanga, lijen kanla, dejen jawan, sanje tenpa tado ne je. Okay? Thank you. Thank you everybody.
Thank you, Geshe-la.